So, now that I've covered a lot of Invicta videos, there's another YouTuber who I've also been kind of obsessed with, and this man's name is Epimetheus, I think. And, yeah, I've seen some of his videos off screen, and I'm actually quite a fan of him too. So I'm gonna be watching something very interesting. It's his video about the rise and fall of the Seleucid Empire. Um, or is this the Seleucid Empire? I always say Seleucid, but forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. But, yeah, funny thing is, guys, ever since February when we covered, the Roman conquest of Greece for my birthday, that video, I've actually been really interested in the Seleucid Empire. Like, especially, like, looking back in the Diadochi Wars. Like, before it was just, I was like, Ptolemaic Egypt was kind of like my favorite faction, but now that I've thought about it, the Seleucids have actually kind of overtaken that, as I've been really interested. I've been looking at videos and some things off-screen, but this is an empire that unfortunately doesn't really get much coverage in the mainstream, and I'm starting to think it's like very underrated and underappreciated. So I'm looking forward to kind of like looking at this video and seeing more about it. I guess he's gonna cover it from its rise to fall, obviously, from its beginning to its end. So yeah, I'm really excited for this one. And without any further ado, let's look at it. Let's see the rise and fall of the Seleucid Empire.
For more than 2 centuries, the Persian Empire was the most powerful military and political entity on Earth. Alexander of Macedon conquered this massive empire in a few years, with a relatively small army. This event shook the ancient world. Alexander is most commonly known as Alexander the Great for this great accomplishment. However, he did not enjoy it for a great deal of time. Upon returning to Babylon and relaxing for about 5 minutes, he got sick and died in 323 BC.
Wait, what was that?
Relaxing for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think Alexander was planning on conquering, Sorry. I get vocal fatigue, so if you watch these videos, it always sounds I'm drinking water. But, yeah, I think he was planning on conquering the Arabian coast. And then from then on, who knows what the heck he would have gone, or where he would have gone. But, Alexander's army never measured, I think it was like between 40 to 60,000. Like, in the grand scheme of things, not the largest army of all the videos we've seen, but yet just probably at this point in history the best army on Earth, you know. I mean, granted, I don't know about the rest of the world, but at least around here, yeah, Alexander had the best army. And yeah.
He got sick and died in 323 BC. His top generals, officials, and relatives, all former friends, allies, and battle brothers, turned on each other. The chaotic struggle for the unbelievable amount of wealth and power obtained by the Macedonians unleashed decades of war between the successors of Alexander, known as the Wars of the Diadochi. Of Alexander's many illustrious generals, officers, and retainers who fought to control his empire, Seleucus was an unlikely prospect to emerge victorious from the fray.
I know. Gosh darn. Yeah, Seleucus, man. He was like, before Alexander's death and before his rise, he wasn't like a prominent person in the grand scheme of things, you know, like Antigonus or whatnot. Like, he was a relatively like minor person who showed up and ended up becoming the best, you know, or at least one of the best. Yeah, he really is amazing. Literally from a nobody to a nightmare, that TV trope. And yeah.
In the conquests of Alexander, Seleucus had worked his way up the ranks from a minor officer to an elite infantry unit commander. He had no territory and a little over 2,000 men personally loyal to himself, which was relatively insignificant compared to an empire populated by millions, where hundreds of thousands were being marshaled throughout by the top contenders to succeed Alexander. So Seleucus, a beefy hulk of a man who played up the association between himself and a bull, was compelled to play a supporting role for the...
I've never seen Seleucus depicted with a bull helm. I'm not sure if this is just his unique take or if he actually had a bull helm. I know Alexander had a lion helm. It's been documented that he had like a lion helmet in popular culture, so not gonna lie, the bull helm kind of goes hard though. If you told me it, I would be like, it sounds kind of dumb, but nah, this looks kind of cool. Look at this drip, dude. Like, I'd be afraid of a huge dude wearing that, you know?
quite some time. War was initially instigated when the corpse of Alexander was stolen en route for burial in Macedon by Ptolemy, Alexander's general, who had been appointed governor of Egypt. Seleucus and his men first backed Perdiccas, who was initially the most powerful. However, after leading a poorly planned invasion of Egypt, Perdiccas was assassinated by his own men. Seleucus was likely involved. In the Second War of the Diadochi, which soon followed after peace interrupted for a short time, Seleucus backed his old friend Antigonus the One-Eyed, who replaced Perdiccas as the leading power. Antigonus appointed Seleucus satrap of Babylon. There, Seleucus ingratiated himself with the local population, with whom he was quite popular. He generously funded temples and local institutions. Additionally, a year before Alexander's death, around 100 of his top officers were compelled to marry Persian wives.
Yeah, I remember this. I think Seleucid's the only one, Seleucus is the only one to actually remain married to his Persian wife. So, yeah, that's a pretty interesting thing.
In an effort to amalgamate Persian and Greek culture, power, and people, Alexander's vision was abandoned not long after his corpse was cold. Seleucus was the only top officer of note who remained married to his Persian bride, while the rest discarded theirs. Some have said this was out of love, but it may also have been a calculated strategic decision. Having the knowledge and credibility of a native noble family on one side was a valuable asset, which was overlooked by Seleucus's peers and superiors. He even...
Again, there's... Seleucus is, like, easily one of the top Diadochi, and incredibly shrewd, too, like, politically. Like, there's a reason his empire ended up the biggest of the bunch, and, you know, like, he had moves like this, him, like, kind of making himself popular among the natives, remaining faithful to his Persian wife, like, you can see, like, already, the guy, even before he took full power, was kind of taking steps to ensure his own, like, popularity and prestige, as it were, you know?
Later claimed that his wife was the daughter of Darius, the last Persian Shah, which made their son the legitimate heir and rightful ruler of the Persian Empire.
Yeah, but still, great PR, though, you gotta admit, like, it's kind of like when people, after Alexander died, all said, oh, I had a dream of Alexander telling me to conquer the empire, you know, kind of just the political chess moves, you know?
Because of Seleucus's growing popularity, Antigonus likely viewed him as a potential rival.
Yep. And boy, was Antigonus right, though it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because Antigonus tries to get rid of Seleucus, but Seleucus manages to rebound right back after taking shelter with Ptolemy.
After Antigonus executed a mutual friend who was accused of plotting a rebellion, Seleucus feared Antigonus was planning to execute him next, so he fled to Egypt. There, Ptolemy provided him protection, and later an army. Seleucus used the army to conquer Babylon, while Ptolemy...
Isn't that wild that at one point Seleucus and Ptolemy were just like allies? It's funny looking in hindsight that the two empires that these two began would go on to fight each other until, you know, eventually Rome just takes it all. Well, and the Parthians, can't forget the Parthians in the east. But yeah, like at this point, if they had the knowledge of hindsight, I wonder what Ptolemy would have thought. Like, I could help this guy, but who knows? But at this point, Antigonus was just the ultimate enemy for everyone. So yeah.
Ptolemy and Antigonus were sparring in the Levant.
This may be the last.
In Babylonia, Seleucus finally established independent rule in 312 BC. That lasted for about a year. While Seleucus was expanding his territory in the east, many of the local Iranians switched sides and rallied to his cause. Meanwhile, he lost Babylon, and the city was sacked. Following a 2-year war with Antigonus, Seleucus retook Babylon and then made peace. After Alexander's death, his brother and son inherited his titles, Lord of Asia, Shah and Shah of Persia, along with many other regal titles. But in reality, those with armies at their command wielded true authority and controlled the empire's finances. Both Alexander's brother and young son were murdered. After all of Alexander's potential heirs had been hunted down and killed, his generals officially proclaimed themselves kings, which they already kind of were. Seleucus did so in 305 BC.
I think it was Antigonus with his son Demetrius who started that trend, though. He's the one who just said, you know what, guys? Let's drop the act. We're all kings here. And everyone followed suit, you know?
Seleucus's authority was firmly established over the eastern provinces during a 4-year period, transforming his territory into a proper empire. This brought the Seleucids into contact with another rapidly expanding empire, the Mauryan Empire of Chandragupta.
Yeah. They were supposedly, they had a war with each other, and that we don't really know the details of, except they made peace, and, you know, Seleucus gave up territory, but in return got elephants, and I think Seleucus married his daughter to, what was the genre group though? But, it's speculated Seleucus lost the war, because he's the one who gave up territory. But then again, that could have maybe been a shrewd move, because, you know, some of this later territory Alexander captured before he died here near India, I've heard wasn't completely sustainable, or at least not without great effort, so it could have just been more shrewd, but yeah, it's speculated that Seleucus lost against Chandragupta.
Not much is known about the ensuing war between these two empires, other than that the Macedonians were expelled from the Indian subcontinent. A peace treaty was then successfully negotiated, which recognized Mauryan territorial gains, and an alliance formed, sealed with a diplomatic marriage between Seleucus's daughter and the Indian emperor. In exchange, Chandragupta gave Seleucus a formidable force of 500 trained war elephants.
Which is wild to inherit. That's like basically the tanks of the not medieval, well, kind of, they carried into the medieval era. But yeah, elephants were like the tanks before tanks arrived. And this actually was useful in the Battle of Ipsus for him defeating Antigonus, so at the end, a pretty good deal, in a sense, you know, for Seleucus.
2 years later, these elephants were used to great effect to decisively defeat Antigonus at the Battle of Ipsus, where Old One-Eye lost his life. After the battle, the Seleucid Empire enjoyed more than a decade of relative peace, during which time Seleucus was able to indulge in his real passion, city building. His greatest project had already begun a few years before, Seleucia, a brand new capital city. It was built near Babylon, and no expense was spared trying to outshine the grand old city. Seleucia's population did not grow fast enough to fill the massive metropolis being built, so much of Babylon's population was relocated to the nearby city to realize Seleucus's vision of a grand metropolitan capital city bearing his name.
Yeah, I think it's the cultural aspect. Obviously, they were all Macedonians and Greeks ruling over foreign lands, but, you know, like, the Seleucid Empire just seems so interesting in terms of just almost trying to mix culture, you know? And yeah, I didn't know he was so... I mean, we did cover he did build cities, but he seems to have really wanted to kind of do what Alexander was doing to mix the peoples, you know, and create some kind of more unified culture, which I can't help but respect.
In addition to this, dozens of cities were built in which Greek immigrants were encouraged to settle in. Many of these cities, Seleucus named after himself, his father, or his wife who passed away. After Ipsus, Seleucus made an alliance with Demetrius, the son of Antigonus the One-Eyed. To seal the alliance, he married Demetrius's daughter, who was 40 years younger than him. While Demetrius was establishing himself as king in Macedon, one of history's more weird events took place. Seleucus's son Antiochus fell madly in love with his stepmom to an unhealthy level. His father felt sorry for the young lad and worried that he might die of sadness. So he let him marry his stepmom, who the old king had just had a child with.
Okay, that caught me off guard. Oh my gosh. Ew, what is this? I didn't think this was like a Pornhub video. Like, what the heck am I watching? I kid. Hey, stepmom. But like, that's wild.
This was scandalous, even by the standards of the time. However, this may have all been part of a plan to insult Demetrius, who Seleucus hated. After ditching the daughter, the two kings promptly went to war. Demetrius was militarily successful in the beginning, but his unpaid soldiers became disgruntled. As soon as they saw Seleucus, who had gained a reputation for being wealthy and generous with his soldiers, Demetrius' army immediately surrendered before the battle. Demetrius was captured and later died in captivity. In 282 BC, the pharaoh Ptolemy died in Egypt, leaving Seleucus and Lysimachus as the last two surviving successors of Alexander. So naturally, they went to war with each other for one last old man fight.
For old time's sake, let's fight each other. They were competing. They were like, okay, we've all fought each other. Which one of us can proclaim to be the true winner of the war? That's the thing with Ptolemy and Seleucus. It's debatable. I fall in the line that the Ptolemy won the Diadochi Wars. I know it's even a bit iffy about the term win, but hear me out. I fall into the line that Ptolemy won because he's the only one who got to die a natural cause of death, not without being assassinated. He had the most pragmatic goal, which wasn't to unify the empire like everyone else. It was, I just want Egypt. And he did just that. He took Egypt, he defended it, he fortified it, and he also had the longest lasting of the Diadochi successor empires or kingdoms. It lasted longer than the Seleucid Empire and all the others. So I think by those virtues, you could say he won, and I fall into that camp. But I've also heard people say, no, I think Seleucus won, because he had the largest of the empires, probably achieved greater heights at its peak. Even though Ptolemaic Egypt was also a very culturally rich hub, but some say the Seleucus Empire maybe even more due, to its greatness. Seleucus achieved the greater heights. He basically almost had the entire empire under his thumb, restored under him. Again, those are some arguments I've heard for the Seleucus being the true winner and whatnot. But again, I think Ptolemy, but still, you have to give it to Seleucus. Guy was kind of a minor character and became one of the main ones at the end,
Seleucus won, and Lysimachus died in battle. With little to no resistance standing in his way, Seleucus traveled towards Macedon, and planned to live out his final days in his homeland, which he had not seen for over half a century. Then he was assassinated by a son of Ptolemy who he had given refuge.
The funniest thing, he got killed by a Ptolemy. And, he almost had all of Greece, too. If he hadn't been assassinated, I've heard that, Seleucus could have just had Greece, and that Greece, all the way to here, basically the entire empire minus Egypt, would have been unified. Which is wild to think, right? If he hadn't been killed here. At least that's speculation, he would have taken Greece, and it would have all been under him, minus Egypt. But still, as it stands, this is still an impressive chunk,
The death of Seleucus marked the end of the Wars of the Diadochi. He had been the last contemporary of Alexander to be left standing, with the largest piece of his empire.
Yeah, and that's another thing, part that why people would say he won. He's the last guy technically standing, so I don't know. At least in his lifetime, but
Son Antiochus reigned for 2 decades, which was arguably the most peaceful and prosperous period in the empire's history, as large-scale commerce flowed between the Mauryan Empire in India and the Seleucid Empire. Early in Antiochus's reign, A major Gallic invasion into Asia Minor was crushed, in large part thanks to his Indian elephants, which the Gauls had never seen before. For this victory, he was given the title Savior. His reign also saw the first of many largely inconclusive wars fought against the Ptolemies of Egypt. His son, Antiochus II, also waged war against the Ptolemies. While he was distracted there, the eastern half of the empire, which cared little for these wars, broke off, with their governors solidifying their independence by the end of his reign. Seleucus II followed with a long series of disasters. He was competent,
Want to glow up?
determined,
Yeah, look at the empire already falling apart. At least with Antiochus the first, things were relatively stable for, from the height of the Seleucus to the seemingly peaceful, reign of Antiochus the first. Things were pretty good, but then after that, now the chunks are starting to fall apart, right?
and very unlucky. From the onset of his reign, he faced numerous rebellions, invasions, and civil wars. 2 of his brothers attempted to become independent rulers, with some success before they were killed. After many years of war, he was able to hold the empire together in the west, while launching failed campaigns in the east. He also built a large fleet that sank. Then, unexpectedly, he fell off a horse and died. His
Talk about, bad luck is a great way to put it. That sucks. It seems like he was actually at least trying to be a good king. Granted, everything was just falling apart, but I don't get the impression, at least from this telling, that he was just because he didn't care about ruling. It seems like he actually did want things to go well. It's just he was either, just really bad luck and bad execution. That sucks.
son, Seleucus III, was even more unfortunate, and was assassinated before he really got to do anything.
Oh.
The empire in turmoil then passed to another son, Antiochus III, who
Yes.
waged successful campaigns in every direction,
The Great.
and for a short time.
So, this is actually why I got interested in the Seleucid Empire. When we back in February, my birthday, when we covered the Roman conquest of Greece by kings and generals, this guy showed up with all the hype in the world. Kings and generals was like, Antiochus the Great, the greatest general of his age. Hannibal Barca's on his side. He now wants to fight the Romans. And I was like, how have I never heard of this man? He sounds amazing. He sounds like the perfect enemy and rival to the Romans. And then he shows up and gets completely wrecked on all fronts. He tries diplomacy to win the Greeks over. That he fails in that regards. The Romans' PR was just better. He gets his butt kicked in Thermopylae. Instead of, because he showed up with a smaller army, he tried to hold it and then got wrecked. And then he fought at the Battle of Magnesium or something. And despite having the Romans crushed his left, but he crushed the Romans' right. And instead of capitalizing on that, he just leaves the main army to go attack the Roman camp, which is fortified. So he comes back and he loses the battle. And then he just makes peace. A humiliating peace. He basically loses to the Romans, gives up most of his holdings here in Anatolia, leaves and then dies, and I was so disappointed, guys. And then I watched the Battle of Raphia by History March, and only to learn that he lost that battle too by the exact same mistake he made against the Romans. He crushed one of the Ptolemies' flanks, and then just left the battle, and then came back after his army lost. So I'll admit, guys, I was really mean. I was mainly because I was disappointed. When I see the title The Great, I think of, like, winners. I think of Alexander. I think of Frederick. I think of, like, Peter. I think of people who won, and, that was my expectation. I was like, and then he shows up and loses all these important battles, and I'm like, oh, I guess he gets the title because he restored the Seleucid Empire, and I get it. I mean, I'll say, this is probably one of my more controversial takes. I don't think he deserves the title The Great. At best, maybe The Good. But, he took a lot of L's that, in a way, very few people who have, like I said, for a guy called the Great, he took a lot of L's and lost most of the most important battles of his career. So again, that's probably one of my more unpopular opinions, that I don't think he deserves the title the Great. I would put at least at best the Good. But that's just my opinion. But I have to say though, it's because of him that we're doing this video, and it's because of him and how baffled I was that I become interested in the Seleucid Empire. So I have to say, in the long run, maybe it was for the best. Because I'm interested in the Seleucid. Oh my gosh, right? That's not any more egotistical. I mean, it's for the best for this channel, for me to learn. But, I don't know. I was a little disappointed with him. Actually, very disappointed. In a way, I can't think of anyone else I was more disappointed by than Antiochus so far.
He made the Seleucid Empire great again. Near the end of his reign,
For a few
the Roman
years.
Republic decisively defeated Antiochus the Great in the west. Fun fact, Hannibal Barca, famous for nearly defeating Rome.
Yes, and this is another part of why I was so upset with him. Because the dude had so much potential to be like a great rival to Rome. He could have been Parthia before Parthia, in a sense, in terms of being another great empire to rival the Romans. He had all the things. He had the army, he had the resources, he had Hannibal Barca on his side. Hannibal Barca is my favorite military commander of all time. He is the ultimate Roman slayer. And he completely wasted him. He made him a naval commander. That's like having Napoleon on your team and making him run a navy. Great people, but they were naval commanders in their careers. And it's like, that was the biggest fumble, I think, on his part. And I get that, like, people are like, he can't just have a foreigner, showing him up. But I'm like, yeah, Hannibal would have shown him up. Like, could have at least kept him around and taken some pointers, because Hannibal would have won. If Seleucus, I mean, maybe not won, but he could have probably actually won a battle if Hannibal were there guiding or helping. I think also I've heard that, like, Hannibal had a plan that he wanted resources to go to Carthage and raise up a rebellion, and he was confident he could raise an army there. And he also, I think, advised Antiochus to not let the Romans take the initiative, to not fight in Greece, but to invade Italy itself. I mean, I know there's a lot of what-ifs and whatnot, but I honestly think, considering what actually happened, maybe listening to Hannibal, who actually knew how to fight the Romans, or at least giving him an army, would have been better. I would have just given Hannibal an army. I'm like, you know what, Hannibal? Have an army, have 20,000 men, do what you need to do. Honestly, if he had just done that, I would have been like, this man's a genius. But again, completely wasted the talents of Hannibal Barca. And that's why I'm upset, because my favorite military commander got completely wasted.
During the Punic Wars, was one of Antiochus the Great's military advisors and generals during his failed war with Rome. Like the Carthaginians, they were forced to pay massive war reparations, 450 tons of silver in their case. The eastern provinces took the opportunity to break off. Antiochus moved to retake the eastern territory, and was slain during a minor raid on a temple. He died without fully repaying the war reparations to Rome. This compelled his successors to raise taxes throughout the empire.
I believe it's his. Yeah, look at all that. Like, again, Antiochus definitely, helped the Seleucids get back in shape, but then immediately, with his failed war of Rome, sent everything back on a spiral, so that sucked. I also think it's his son. It's, Antiochus IV, that is responsible for the Maccabean revolt due to, not being as religiously tolerant towards the Jewish people, and yeah, I believe it also comes back to bite that.
And confiscate temple treasuries, including the Hebrew temple in Jerusalem. Relations with Judea deteriorated during the reign of Antiochus IV. The long-held Seleucid policy of respecting local culture and institutions was reversed, making the worship of Greek gods mandatory. This triggered the Maccabean revolt. Leading up to this, Antiochus launched the first successful Seleucid invasion of Egypt. There he placed a puppet on the throne. Then the Romans told him to leave Egypt alone. So he did.
I remember that from Kings and Generals. Dude literally finally took it, and the Romans basically told him to piss off, and he did. Wild.
In the east, the semi-nomadic Parthians began annexing the Iranian plateau, which caused the Seleucid army to split, with some trying to quash the rebellion in Judea, while the rest attempted to stop the Parthians. Both failed. The Seleucids suffered heavy losses against the Maccabees, who waged a hit-and-run guerrilla war against them. After retaking Jerusalem, the temple was reconsecrated, which the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah celebrates. A few years after the death of Antiochus IV, the Maccabees negotiated peace on very favorable terms, where they became a sovereign vassal state. This later evolved into the Hasmonean Kingdom of Judah, which had further conflict with the Seleucids. The Seleucid Empire attempted to concentrate all of their resources on stopping the Parthian threat, which failed. Urban unrest in the cities, rebellion by governors, civil war, and palace intrigue all handicapped their response. In 141 BC, the Parthians captured Seleucia. In the later decades of the 2nd century BC, the Seleucid Empire shrank into a small bickering shadow of its former self, which was under heavy Roman influence. In 83 BC, internal strife was so bad that one faction offered the Seleucid crown to Tigranes of Armenia, who was seen as strong and competent. Tigranes easily conquered them, effectively ending the empire. 14 years
Wait a minute, I thought it was Pompey who technically ended the Seleucid Empire.
later, Tigranes was defeated by the Romans and made a vassal. The reanimated corpse of the Seleucid kingdom was revived. So
The Seleucid zombie state. Okay, I think this is what Pompey killed, yeah.
they decided to have one last civil war. Then the
One more for old time's sake. Let's fight. At this point, what else can you do?
Romans came in and put an end to all the silliness and annexed the territory. This has been Epimetheus. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to...
Epimetheus, I'm becoming quite the fan of you, so I have to say that was a great telling, and that's great. I want to learn more about the Seleucid Empire. I'm so fascinated by them, but I know they're very underrated, and they're not really talked about, you know. But again, like I would like to know more about their influence in terms of world history, and especially in the East, before Parthia and the Sassanids. Surely they must have had a greater influence, and also even just seeing their wars, would be great. But I know they're not really a popular topic, so oh well. Either way, great video. I really enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys later.